Hey everybody now, welcome to the Live on Four Legs YouTube channel, and today's our 6th tier list. We've done so many of these so far. There have been some difficult decisions, there have been some great decisions, and one we're very happy with. And now we're on Binaural. Binaural's a great album, you guys. Binaural is probably not one that a lot of fans gravitate towards because it was kind of during the time where it's outside the 90s and Pearl Jam were experimenting a little bit, and they'd kind of dropped Brendan O'Brien and got Chad Blake to produce the record, and a whole different sound doing the kind of the two sides of audio thing, and it's just... It didn't really fit at first, and then I think after a while, people came to realize that binaural is actually pretty good. And I think for a lot of people, binaural is the record that maybe they picked up the least. And then by the later days of their Pearl Jam fandom were like, oh, what was I missing? And I say that because that man was me. That binaural was one of the last in full that I gave a listen and gave a chance, because I just kind of thought, you have to go through the track listing on this, and the track list, where flowing from song to song, it's left a little bit to be desired, and I think that's a little bit why the album suffers a little bit from that. We have some difficulty kind of like feeling a flow with it and feeling good with it at first. And they actually had a different track listing for this, if you go and look, and it had all those Lost Dog songs like Education and In the Moonlight, and a bunch of Fatal and a bunch of those others that didn't end up on the album, but it was going to be like a 16-track album for a while until they cut it down. And some of the songs, I think God's Dice wasn't even originally on that. So, but, I think this was also in an era where Pearl Jam really wasn't very the style of Pearl Jam's music wasn't popular anymore. Everybody wanted nu metal. Everybody wanted like Limp Bizkit and Korn, unfortunately. And, we saw who kind of rose to the occasion and kind of, came out of that alive. Well, it was the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame band, not the band that did the Nookie or whatever. I think Binaural, it doesn't have a lot of staying power, but it has a lot of impact afterwards. I think there are a lot of people that after 2000 kind of came and went, like maybe they ignored it for a little bit, but then it kind of had a resurgence for a lot of people a little bit later, and that's when Binaural really, you kind of miss some of these songs that, especially like Grievance, Insignificance, Light Years, that should get played a little bit more, but unfortunately, Binaural not being the most popular record kind of get left off. So now we're going to figure out where they belong on the tier list. We got one that's going to be in the S. The first tier, which is going to be very interesting to see what is going to go in the first tier. And we usually have about 4 or 5. We have 5 to start, and then one goes into the S, so it ends up with 4. Then the second tier, going to find out what's in the second tier of songs, and the third tier. And I don't think we're going to have any non-applicable today. We don't have like writer's block in this. I didn't add hummus to the yield one, so we're kind of working off stuff that are all pretty legit songs here. So let's buckle up on this one. Let's get to it. I'm going to start out with the first track of the record, and that's Breaker Fall. And Breaker Fall is pretty cool because you have to go back to the Who song I Can See for Miles, and that's sort of where that beginning kind of comes in, that and like that's kind of the same feel as that. It's a little bit more harder, it's a little bit more punk rock than what the Who did, but it's a good one to kind of start you off. It's a good one to kick off the album. I don't think it's as strong as Brainerd J or Last Exit or Go. I think those are really, that's the height of the album openers. Those are the ones I hold in very, very high regard. And Breaker Fall is like the second tier of those. But it's, and I think it's also the second tier of this album too. While it's very good, it's just super fast, and it doesn't really define what the album's going to be. It's really tough to get that from that, because in the middle here, there's so much songs with depth. And Breaker Fall is just very quick, and to get down dirty into what the lyrics mean and to what the situation's about, yeah, Breaker Fall is better than you think. But I think that's your first kind of example of the album almost getting off to a fluke start, where it goes into, a couple other punk rock songs, but the full album doesn't feel like the first 3. So Breaker Fall I think is the best of the bunch in the first three that we're going to talk about, and I think it belongs in the second tier. Not the first tier. I think you can save it for other songs in this, but second tier, sure. God's Dice. God's Dice I like. God's Dice I like, but again, like, I think that this is not one of the songs that really kind of had much staying power after 2000. You know, I don't think about it too much when I think about just Pearl Jam songs in general. It's a fine song, and I like when it comes up. I like having the discussion about it, but it's tough. I don't know if it's a lack of depth. I don't know if it's like too many verses and like you can't really sing along with it. I think that might be a little bit difficult. And look, Jeff's songs are good, and there's going to be a Jeff song that comes up in a little bit that's going to be tremendous. It's a tremendous Jeff song, maybe one of his best. But God's Dice is one of the weird ones for him, and like it's his idea of punk rock. Again, the beginning kind of comes in like immediately. You're like, kind of takes you back. You're like, wow, okay. But doesn't really have a massive attachment. So I'm putting it in third tier. And look, if we need more for the second tier, I can think about bumping it up. But third tier is good. Third tier is not a bad thing. Third tier is just kind of how we're going to separate these things. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of songs that I kind of hold in higher regard, and I think the band holds in higher regard. Evacuation, that's another one, same category as God's Dice. It's fine. I don't really have a lot of attachment to it. I think there's some fans that like it okay, but I think, again, it's one of those things. It's like, gun to your head, name like 100 Pearl Jam songs. When are you going to name Evacuation? I'm not sure if it's in my 100, because I might have 100 songs that I think are better than that. I think I do. And it's always clunky live. I think Ed makes the joke that I think they played in Pittsburgh once, and he was like, oh, this is your hometown song because it has 3 bridges in it, and that always made it tricky. I think there was one time where they completely aborted on the song mid-song, and they were just like, no, this doesn't work. And yeah, that's sort of the same way I feel about it. It just doesn't have the same staying power. And again, like, you need to get off to a really hot start with this record, and I don't think they quite hit it there. I don't think they quite did. You know, Evacuation's in the third tier. It starts to get good now. It really starts to get good now. Light Years is a fantastic song, fantastically written, and there's so much heart to it, and you can kind of feel, there's some songs that you can really kind of feel have the soul of Ed, and that he's talking about something like deep within him that is meaningful to him. And this is about, I think, a record executive that passed away that really kind of helped Pearl Jam along and kind of stuck with them over the years in the 90s. And, you know, there's some very powerful versions of this. And anytime I think about, like, somebody that we've lost or somebody in my family that I'm missing, I kind of think of the lyrics for Light Years. The lyrics, we were but stones, your light made us stars. That was a fixture at my wedding. It was on the picture table, the memory table. And I wanted it to be there because I think it perfectly encapsulates that kind of moment. I've never seen the song live, and boy, it's like the one that I'm really reaching for the most. And they actually had it on the set list at See Her Now. They cut it, unfortunately. On this list, it makes the first tier. We'll have a really good shot to the S tier. A really good shot. Light Years, one of the classics. Nothing As It Seems. We talked about Jeff songs. This is one of Jeff's best. I have to tell you, this is one of Jeff's real best songs, because when you think about this, and a lot of what Pearl Jam does, when you have one of the members that writes the lyrics and the music for the songs, and I think about, like, when Mike wrote the music to Do the Evolution and Brainerd J, where Stone takes the solos in that. Like, that's such a cool aspect to those songs. You would think that, you know, any other person would be like, I'm writing this song, I am going to take all the big moments. But Jeff writes the song as kind of this stark, deep-seated blues song, and then gives it a moment where he can say, okay, Mike, what do you got? What can you add into this? You listen to the demo of this, and it's like, oh, this is really dark. This is deep here. And out of the demo, obviously, Mike puts his solo on it. He puts his take on it, and you're just blown away by what he can do. It's one of those songs. It's up there with the Even Flow solo. It's up there with some of the best solos in their catalog that Mike can just wail on. Inside Job. Mike wrote Inside Job, but Mike gets a moment in Inside Job. I give it to him there. But Nothing As It Seems is another one of these great atmospheric songs that you just want to hear this loud. You want to hear this reverberate, and outside in front of a massive group of people. It makes for that great kind of moment. I'm putting it in the first tier, no doubt about it. First tier song. Thin Air is next. A little anecdote on Thin Air. What Ed has mentioned, he at one time wanted this to be a single and was thinking about making this into a music video, which obviously they weren't doing a lot at the time. So he thought of the song kind of being like this karaoke song and, having like a bouncing ball at the bottom. I think he told this maybe at the Binaural Toronto show. I can't remember which one it was. And he told the story, and he's like, it just never kind of came to be, but that's what he saw out of the song. It was kind of this like, cheesy kind of love hand-in-hand sort of thing. And at this time, Pearl Jam didn't have a ton of love songs. And I still, that's something in their catalog that they're kind of lacking a little bit, when other bands are usually like, all right, 1 or 2 love songs an album. Like, they kind of make it a thing. But I think at this time, they were starting to sort of be like, okay, maybe we need to, there's songs that are about love, but they have other aspects into it. It's like, it's about love, but it's also about in life and what's happening next and what's happening at this current moment. And Thin Air, I don't see a lot of the depth with it that other people do. When I think of Pearl Jam love songs, I think of Just Breathe and even Future Days to an extent. It's tough to think Thin Air. It is one of those love songs, but it's tough to take it out of that category and be like, okay, where does it fit for binaural? And I'm just really unsure with this one. It's fine, but it doesn't fit my criteria. However, I understand that it does fit other people's criteria for what a good Pearl Jam song is. So I will kind of settle the balance there and put Thin Air at the second tier. Maybe personally it's not one of the songs that I would consider, but I think adding in what the band thinks of it and adding in what the people think of it, I think it gets bumped a little bit from the third tier. Insignificance, especially lately, it's the song that, I don't know why, but every time I turn it on, especially the live version, I just get entranced by it. That beginning, you can kind of, again, another song that you can kind of paint a story to. And this, I just kind of at the beginning, I've always saw a plane propeller kind of going off, and I kind of the tone of the setting for a small town getting bombed. And unfortunately, what we're seeing right now within Russia and Ukraine, that's a scary moment where you can envision something like that going on over there. But I've always kind of seen this as, that anti-war kind of song, that, anti-bomb sort of song, and it's kind of it's a protest song in all the great ways. Is another song that's going to come up here is going to be a protest song in all the great ways too. And I just think Insignificance, when you sort of build to that moment, there's not a lot that reach that moment where Insignificance has its breaking point. And that last little part where they kind of really start speeding it up, start ramping it up, and then really get into it at the end of the song, oh man, it's intense. It's intense. I don't know why they haven't brought it back into, recent era, and they've sort of left it behind. But man, this one in its prime was unreal. I think it's its best within small crowds. You got to look at the Showbox Theater show, the one they made the DVD for. in 2002. And Insignificance, that's one of the best versions there. I think that it's a first tier song. I like it so much that I think it belongs there. Of the Girl is another one, like, pretty cool, and I think had a lot of respect for a little bit later. It's another one that Stone wrote. Stone wrote a couple ones on this album, like Thin Air and Rival. And yeah, Of the Girl just like has a really cool vibe to it. And again, Stone kind of wrote it, so another like bluesy one, another little bit downtrodden, but kind of gives you sort of a unique groove to it too. And then Mike can go off in 3 different moments that sound really, really good. And it's one that if they open with it, you're thinking, okay, what else are we getting this night? Because that's not very common to do. Of the Girl's not a very common song. I think it sneaks up on you a little bit. It really does. And although I think that maybe it falls a little bit short of the first tier, I think it's a really solid second tier song. I really do. I think it's in 2 tier, and I don't think that there's a bad thing about that. And sometimes I get in a groove with that song where I'm like, yeah, really, Of the Girl is one of the better ones from this record. And I just see a couple that are left, and maybe we can get into a discussion. If not enough, make the first tier, that we can add one. If that happens, Of the Girl will be in that conversation. So we move on to Grievance, and not a lot to say here, because just get into that booming drum intro. Like, that's the way you're kicking the song off. It just hits heavy. It's a heavy song. It's another one where it takes that punk rock edge, and it gets angrier and angrier as it goes on, and Ed's at full throttle with his voice. Another anti-war song. I like another one. Why don't they play it more often? And I think it's, honestly, out of all these songs, I think it's the song from Binaural I've seen the most, which is not saying a lot, because in the time that I was really seeing them, Grievance really wasn't being played a lot. So, oh man, I've loved it. I've loved it for such a long time. It has so many great moments in it, and when you get like good booming versions of this live, it can't be beat. It can't be beat. Grievance is A tier. Oh, Rival. Rival's another late stage song that grew on me with age, and again, another Stone song that just, for a while when listening to it, it felt like you sort of get seasick. And I've always said that about Wash. Like, Wash kind of has this, like, rhythm, like, kind of back and forth, and kind of feels like a little bit of a wave. And I think Rival sort of has that same kind of progression to it, both written by Stone. So, not surprising at all that they're very similar. But, like, Rival, after a while, you kind of listen to it, and it's deep on the record, and maybe it doesn't get a lot of love because it's deep on the record, and it's sort of, like, it's relevant now. It is relevant now when we're still having school shootings and still all these terrible things. Like, Rival, at the time was kind of touching on a sensitive subject, what happened with Columbine. And not a lot of people really wanted to talk about Columbine after it happened. They bring it up, but it's like, okay, no, this is not appropriate for kids. We shouldn't learn from this, and we haven't learned from this. I think everything that's happened since, and I'm like a stone's throw away from Sandy Hook, so I know all about, the people that are grieving from all that. And Rival sort of puts that into perspective. And, it paints the picture of like kind of like angry teens that are pro-gun heavy, and it sort of encapsulates a society that doesn't necessarily blink an eye when you think about guns, but other things that are less harmful. They'll go at the picket lines and they'll shout their grievances against that. And the Pink Pop version is the best. The Pink Pop version is the best of this, but like Rival's so relevant right now, and I don't think enough people know that. Second tier, because it'd be hard to throw that in the first tier. And let's get to Sleight of Hand now. And Sleight of Hand is one that's very good, but I have a tough time sort of like figuring out where the song fits, and it's late on the record, so very early on in listening to Binaural, like from Rival on, you're just like, where's this going? And it doesn't really fit in a lot of Pearl Jam categories. It's a little weird. And this one, I think, is another Jeff song, so it's very spacey and kind of fits that role to it. And, like, it's good. I like, when it kind of has that heavy drive to it in the choruses, it sounds really good. But, there's something that separates some of these songs from being memorable and being like sort of the underdog of the record, the one that doesn't get a lot of, attention. And for me, like, I think that all these songs in the first and second tier are better than Sleight of Hand. That's nothing, it's not a slight against Sleight of Hand. It's just, I think it's just the way that it all is drawn out. So, it's fine. It's good. And I've heard it live before, and it actually worked live. And, it might be one that the crowd doesn't attach themselves to because they don't play it too often. So, like, it might bore some casual fans, which, again, they're casual fans. Like, if it bores you, then, maybe pick up a record once in a while and stuff won't bore you. But I think it's third tier. I don't think it's wrong to say that. Soon Forget. Cutesy little ukulele song, and at the time Ed was making a statement with it, with the Bill Gates mask, and really is like kind of Bill Gates sort of song where he's really kind of talking about like that sort of rich, stuck-up mentality that Gates had, especially in this time period where Gates was like, destroyed the internet, destroyed Netflix, destroyed Netscape. Like he was trying to go out and he was trying to turn everything into a monopoly, and all he cared about was profit and not quality of what Microsoft was doing, and he made money off of everybody else suffering. And yeah, I think that song was kind of a fuck you to that you might have your cars, you might have your money, but everybody's laughing at you and nobody fucking likes you. So if you die lonely and you die as a shade of your former self, then nobody's going to celebrate your death. Nobody's going to celebrate what you did because you were a jerk. He sort of redeemed himself with a lot of like charitable functions, and rich people usually make charitable functions and sort of write it off their taxes, but give him credit for that, I suppose. But I soon forget. None of the ukulele stuff really, hits me that hard. So I think it's C tier. And yeah, that's about that. Parting Ways, another one of these songs that just late stages of the song has just grown on me. And it's just another, like, if you go back to, 4 years before this album came out, Ed played this in a sound check in Barcelona, which is a very popular sound check. It has a hard to imagine take on it. It has a couple other takes of songs that they weren't really doing a lot of at the time. I believe I'm Open was played during the sound check, and one of the things was Parting Ways before it was really a song, and you got to listen to the lyrics, and a little bit's in there, a little bit's not. So, but it's very cool to kind of see the evolution of it. And it took them a while to kind of play it as a full band in 2000. It was one of the ones, I think it might have been the song that debuted last out of all these. But boy, those 2000 versions, the couple that they did in 2000, just have a booming bass. Like, and just at the end, Matt can go off, and they kind of give the platform to him, and this song just kills it. It just kills it. And it's very kind of simplistic almost in the beginning, but the ending just drives, picks up steam, and I think is a great way to end an album. And I love album closers, I really do. A lot of the album closers that we've done have ended up in first tier, like in Indifference and all those Yesterdays and Release. And yeah, I think Parting Ways is absolutely in that conversation of great closing songs. So for sure, I think that goes into the first tier. And that might not be a decision that everybody agrees with, because this is an album that I think has a lot of differences between people. So that's again, one person's take, and again, I kind of take it from all different perspectives, but sometimes my opinion on things, I like to kind of just interpret it as sort of a way that you can look at something from a different perspective, and that's all I'm trying to give is some context and perspective. So that's part of why I love Parting Ways. All right, now we have a discussion for the S tier, and I think a lot of these songs they can go in and, not bat an eye on it. Let's move them into the middle here. Years, nice. Insignificance, Grievance. I will say this, I don't think Parting Ways is an S tier song. I think that these four are dominant and, work better on the record. And Parting Ways is a great song, but I think it just stays in the first tier. That's just my take on it. These. What do I do? I don't know. They all have aspects to them that hit heavy. That, Light Years is the emotional one. Nothing As It Seems is the big guitar solo. Insignificance and Grievance are kind of both building to your big moments. And Grievance is the one where Ed really picks up steam, but I don't know. All right, let's do it this way. I don't think Insignificance and Grievance, I've always thought that they were very similar in kind of styles in a way, but I don't think that they both need to be fighting for the S tier. I think we could drop one. And the one I want to drop is Grievance, because I think that if you listen to Insignificance, it just has so much more of an edge than you think. Listen to that last part. Listen to where they break down and just build and rise back up with it. It's one of the best. It really is one of the best. And another underrated one in their catalog, even though everybody seems to really like it. But I think it should be in a lot of people's top 10 songs. Out of Nothing As It Seems and Light Years, I think Light Years has the emotional attachment. And that's what makes it really prominent from this record. While Nothing As It Seems is prominent musically, what holds it back a little bit is maybe some of the lyrics. A whisper through a megaphone, some of those lyrics leave a little bit left to be desired, and they're okay, but, with the lyrics of Light Years and the lyrics of Insignificance, again, the lyrics were written by Jeff. He has a different style to him, but I think they don't compare with these two songs, so that's how I'm going to divide it, and I'm going to drop Nothing As It Seems back down to the 1. So we're down to Insignificance and Light Years here, and just a really tough choice. I think I would like Binaural to have sort of a song that you're not expecting to be its top song, because Binaural has sort of a lot of surprise moments and a lot of things that you wouldn't expect from that record. And I think that the anticipated S-tier song would have to be Light Years from this. And in most situations, I'd say yes. But I think with the S-tier, in some aspects, I would like to get a song that maybe doesn't get the same attention, but is so goddamn good to be up there and to be recognized for it. And I just feel like Insignificance can come out as the champion, because nobody seems to put it in that realm. And look, I tried to put Brain of J in that realm, and I pivoted, and I think it was right to pivot. But for this, while Light Years might be considered the best song off the record, and no doubt about it, they're not wrong by saying that, I think Insignificance is something just, again, listen to the song and listen to how it drives, and the lyrics are great, and it has sort of a hypnotic sort of guitar sound during it, sort of that little spacey, but then kind of takes you out of it and kind of smacks you in the face at certain points. It's just, it's fantastic. It really is. I don't know what other adjectives I can use to describe it, guys. I don't, but I have a good feel off Insignificance. Now, especially, you get versions where the crowd is really into it, and they pogo during it, and they sing, and you get a good crowd with it. Those versions of Insignificance fly higher than any other version of these songs on this album. They really do. And they don't play it a lot anymore, but As we say a lot, they should. Alright, let's go over the tiers once again. On the third tier, we have God's Dice, Evacuation, Sleight of Hand, and Soon Forget. On second tier, we're very balanced with this one. Breaker Fall, Thin Air, Of the Girl, and Rival. I think that some of these might be a little bit unexpected for second tier, like maybe a lot of people consider Rival third tier. But again, that's sort of my interpretation, and a little bit of what we do here is me giving my opinion, but I take everything into account. And then the first tier, Light Years, Nothing As It Seems, Grievance, and Parting Ways. Like, if you didn't expect that, especially Parting Ways, it fell into my lap a little bit. I think Parting Ways or Of the Girl could have been in the first tier, but it was Parting Ways that made it, and I think it's just, again, sneaks up on you, and it just has so much power at the end of it. But Insignificance is number one, and this might be right place, right time for the song, but I think that Insignificance is just so frickin' powerful, and it's one of those that you really get going on it, and you can work a sweat to this song. That's how good it is. So, there's our list. There's Binaural, and I think I'm pretty happy with it, but we have a lot more to do in the coming weeks, because the next time we talk, Riot Act is coming, and Riot Act has 15 songs. 15 songs! There's going to be a lot of tough decisions there. I sort of know what my S tier song is going to be, but I won't tell. So, thank you everybody for tuning in, and make sure you subscribe and like and comment on this YouTube channel. But other things that we have on the YouTube channel as well, there's a podcast here. We've done like 170 episodes for a podcast, and it's all covering individual shows on each episode, and it runs down the set list, and it talks about performances of songs, it talks about the historical aspect, it talks about sort of where it lies in the set list and set list construction, and it kind of talks about the era a little bit too. So if you haven't listened to the podcast yet, you can check it out on either YouTube, where we post everything to YouTube, but that's kind of not fun to watch it on YouTube. It's more fun to listen to it on liveonfourlegs.com, because it gets us some hits, like on our personal page. But you can also subscribe on Apple and Spotify, and if you do, feel free to leave a ranking. Let us know what you think about what we're doing with the podcast. And if you really enjoy it, then I suggest, why not join our Patreon? On patreon.com/liveonfourlegs, we just have so much that you can get from the episodes. Like, we really work hard on studying these things and researching for stuff like our evolution episodes, where the last one we did was Crazy Mary, and we went through and we listened to a lot of versions of Crazy Mary. So you have to take up a lot of time of your day to listen to like 8 or 9 minutes of that song and figure out the evolution, how it's evolved, and what kind of the moving pieces are within each version. And like, we've done evolution songs for so many of these. Along with that, other things on our Patreon, late night series, where we talk about late night shows from Saturday Night Live to VMAs and stuff like that, all their TV appearances. We've done the whole Bridge School series. We've done other things from 1991 and 1992 that are up there. If you want to support the show, it only has to be $1 a month. Or it doesn't even have to be $1 a month. You can sign up for the year for $10, and you save $2 out of that. So that's a bargain to me. Why not do that? But if you want to join up, and for the $5 and $10 tier, you'll be able to get an episode request, which is very cool. And we love hearing from our patrons where, they can request the episode and tell their story, which is great. I love hearing from that perspective. If you want to join up, patreon.com/liveonfourlegs, or download the Patreon app and search for Live on Four Legs, or you can go to liveonfourlegs.com and click on the button that says Become a Patron, and you can do it that way. We're out of time. And I hope you all enjoyed this, but this was great for me. Hopefully it was great for you. So thank you everybody for tuning in. See you next time for Riot Act. Goodbye.